What advisors do you need when you're going into this process? I would say to you, get as much advice as you possibly can. There are advisors and there are quality advisors, and there's a series of questions that you should ask when choosing an advisor. I'll come to that in a minute. Depending upon the franchise that you're buying, if it's a personal services franchise and you're pushing a mower and you're happy to do that, you may not need a glass tower accountant. You may not need a glass tower lawyer. Obviously, the amount of money that you expend depends upon the resources that you call into doing this job, but there's a minimum standard of information that you need. You really, really need an advice on the documentation, and I don't mean 20 pages of Latin. I mean somebody who actually understands these documents, somebody who understands the running of a business, understands how a franchise works, who can speak to you in plain English and give you a 5 or 6 page plain English summary of the more nasty and commercially unacceptable sections of that document. That advice is not a substitute for reading and understanding the entire document. You can't stick it under the leg of a coffee table and just read the 6-page advice. It doesn't work that way. But you really need to get somebody who understands and has seen lots of different versions from lots of different franchise groups of these documents, who can say, that particular clause is commercially unusual and I do not believe it should be there. Or this particular clause is commercially usual, but this is a risk for you because. So a legal advisor and someone to look at your books, absolutely, they're an absolute minimum. You don't necessarily need to be going to a glass tower. Sometimes getting somebody who's got expertise, particularly who may not be in the main street of the CBD, is a better way to go. Look at who's got expertise in this area. If you're choosing a lawyer, if you're choosing an accountant, you need 3 things particularly. You need to be asking them, what work have you done in this area? Give me some examples of what you've done and over what period of time. Secondly, you need to speak to them, even if you're doing it on the phone, and get a feel for whether they're speaking your language. There's a lot of jargon in my industry, and it's unnecessary. If you're paying for this advice needs to be coming to you in plain, simple language, in words you can understand, in lumps that you can do something with. If you're not understanding your advisor, get rid of him. Get an advisor that you can understand. The third thing that you really need is confidence. You need to feel like your advisors have your interests at heart. Now that's a nebulous, subjective thing, but let it be subjective. You're paying the freight, you're paying for these people. If you don't feel like they are pulling on the rope with you, get rid of them. Even if it's us, go and see your advisors and say, I am not confident that you have my interests at heart, that you've got my back. What are you prepared to do to give me that confidence? And if you don't get an answer that's satisfactory, get another one. You're paying for this. The stakes are very high with any purchase of this kind, and you need to feel like the information that you're getting is usable, you understand what your options are, you're getting a recommendation out of that list of options that you can accept and understand. You might not accept that recommendation. Your advisor might give you 4 options and recommend option B. It's perfectly open to you to say to your advisor, look, I understand you've recommended that option and I understand what you've said to me. I don't want that option. I want option C. If your advisor says you can't do that, get rid of him. You're paying for advice. You're not paying to be told what you can and can't do. Your accountant and your lawyer are there to give you information, provide you with options and recommendations. Ultimately, if you make the wrong choice, you're paying the cost and you're getting the wreckage, so you should reserve for yourself the right to make that decision after you've got all the information and after you've had the recommendation from your advisor.